Everybody, hearing stream 6 has reconvened after the lunch break. We are here with representatives from the surveying company here to talk to us. Ms. Helen O'Shaughnessy, the planner, Nick Wakefield, hello, familiar faces from other hearings, so welcome. Now, we've read your planning evidence, Helen, thank you very much for that, and we've also received a PowerPoint presentation which basically illustrates the areas of concern in terms of rezoning and things. Before we start, are you kind of aware of the sort of latest position from the reporting officer in terms of the various rezoning requests for those parcels of land around the place?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
All right, so you're sort of up to date on those things. So bearing that in mind, we're open to hearing from you now. So
Thank you. Thank you, and good afternoon to members of the panel. As the Chairman said, I'm sure many of you recognise me from another life and also from appearing at an earlier hearing stream. I'm accompanied today by Nick Wakefield, a Director at the surveying company and also a licensed cadastral surveyor. I work at the surveying company as a planner. As indicated by the Chairman, I'll take my evidence as read. What I would like to do this afternoon is just to begin by acknowledging those areas of our submission that have been supported by the reporting officer. This basically includes rezoning of land in the Marine Parade, Wellesley Road, Warren Road area from general residential to medium density. And it also captures land zoned at Bayview, which is currently rural lifestyle to settlement. So we just want to acknowledge the support of the reporting officer in those circumstances. And also to say that we accept the reporting officer's recommendation not to rezone from general residential to medium on the Marine Parade and Napier South area. And we also accept the reporting officer's arguments around rezoning of land at the top end of Miani Road, the eastern end of Miani Road around the Miani Hotel, where we had made a case for a change of zone there.
If I can update you, we did have a discussion about both of those, the Marine Parade South and Miani one as well, and the smaller pocket of medium density of general residential, I think there's been some acceptance to rezone that to MRZ. The longer strip at the southern end of the Marine Parade, I think there's a little bit of reconsideration about that zoning that will occur after this hearing, and we'll hear back from Ms. Morgan on that. So that's still a work in progress.
Thank you.
Particular thing. With Miani, dare I call it village, Ms. Morgan is also going to have another reconsideration of that. I put to her this morning about flipping the zoning so it's settlement zone. The concern that she has was around the scope of development that a settlement zoning would enable, and given that it is on highly productive land as well. So there's going to be some reconsideration whether an alternative approach could be more appropriate or not. So we'll have to wait to hear from her on that. So those still matters sort of not in contention. What's the word? In progress, shall we say? Yeah.
Oh, thank you for the update. Right. Does that include the large lot residential that's opposite the kennels as well, or
down the bottom of the screen?
Yes. Yeah.
No. No, there you go. No, it's more around where the hotel is and that sort of intersection area.
Yes.
Yeah, sort of. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, moving along then, what we'd like to do this afternoon is just focus and share our thoughts with the panel around the rezoning, or our submission to rezone land in the Loop, Willowbank and Riverbend Road area, which I'm just going to bring up on my PowerPoint.
So this is the last slide in your presentation?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, it is.
Okay, okay. It's the same there. Yep, right.
So we accept that this land is zoned as HPL2 in the Hawke's Bay Regional Council Land Use Capability Mapping, and therefore captured by the NPS for highly productive land. We also accept that the reporting officer's recommendation to decline the rezoning of this land from rural production to settlement was based very firmly on policy UD 4.4, inappropriate residential greenfield growth areas in the Heritonga Plain sub-region, which is in turn based on the HPUD's report 2017. We sought in our submission to rezone this land to settlement to recognise the existing character and development of the area, which in our view is very firmly residential and not at all suited to rural production. We also base that view on the fact that given the minimum lot size of 4 hectares, which is required by sub S3, many of the sites within this general geographic area are unable to meet that, and it raises the question in our minds, well, if that's the minimum lot size, has that been tested against what would be a feasible economic unit to be productive, or is that just simply a rollover from the operative plan, and how would that work in terms of efficient and feasible land use? We also note that in the event that an activity or a subdivision is unable to meet that 4 hectares minimum lot size, the activity status defaults automatically to non-complying, and the resourcing issues around the preparation of a land use or a subdivision consent for a non-compliant activity, as well as the processing from the local authority perspective, are quite significant. And we appreciate that if the area were to be zoned to settlement, that the 8,000 metres to 1,500 square metre lot sizes would provide huge potential, significant potential for intensification and an increase in the yield of residential lots. But we feel that the resulting density, while it will be contrary to the higher order documents that have been referred to in the Section 42A report, nevertheless don't recognise the existing character and development of the area. We also wanted to comment briefly on reverse sensitivity because of the long-term and established residential use of this area. Should the area be retained as rural production and a complying rural production land use introduced into this area, there is potential for significant reverse sensitivity issues to arise in close proximity to established residential uses. And we finally note that the separation of the surrounding area, which is zoned rural production, by the existing roadwork comprising the loop, Willowbank Avenue and Riverbend Road, provide a natural buffer in terms of a consideration of rezoning of this area. And I would just further note that in terms of highly productive land, if we had had the opportunity in this region for the Regional Council to have undertaken the remapping of HPL, there could have been some movement in terms of the current land use classification of HPL2. That's really a conclusion of the comments that I would like to make, but I'm now like to invite Nick Wakefield to make additional comments.
Yeah, so my comments are going to be restricted mainly to the historic cadastral framework of the area. So essentially, as part of this exercise, we went back and had a look at how this area was developed, and the Loop Road and the Riverbend Road area, particularly the northernmost section of this area, was actually established in its current current cadastral framework back in 1921. So there's been long-standing historic use dating back now over 100 years in a more of a small, the original lot sizes in this area were set at around the 6,000 square metres. So you're talking 1.5 acres, essentially, blocks were created in this area in 1921. Yes, there has been some more fragmentation since then, but essentially that initial framework was established at that time. Yes, there has been some movements subsequent that where there have been subdivisions in this general area. Most of them, I believe, have been done on a non-complying basis prior to MPS HPL, but on the basis that historic land use context were accepted at that time. So I think this reinforces Helen's point that while there are some sort of rural activities occurring in this area, there are significantly more residential activities occurring in this area because of its historic land use. So that was just really to reiterate Helen's points, is that not only is it's long-standing and has been established for quite some time. Apart from that, that's essentially what there was my bit to offer.
Okay, thank you. And did you say that a lot of the subdivision around between the Loop and Riverbend Road is sort of predates even the earthquake, 1921-ish?
Yes. So the original plan that does that, the sort of the top half of the site, you call it, was established. So that survey took place in 1921, so it predates the earthquake. It was one of those fortunate ones that a surveyor had information in his office that he could recreate plans, because a lot of that information did get lost. But no, so that's where it predates the earthquake. Yeah. So it easily predates any RMA or district plans that have been established under that legislation.
And given that it's accepted that it's LUC2 classified land and the MPS for highly productive land is not likely to remove that from it, can you give any advice to the panel around how we address that national policy statement sort of framework, which is quite prescriptive? And
I mean, ultimately, that document is set up to protect highly productive land, but land is only highly productive if its scale and land use can be accommodated together. So so it comes back again to what Helen was saying previously. If we're accepting that 4 hectares is a productive unit and that's where it maintains that level, then there's you did a quick study before, Helen. There was maybe of the 60 odd titles in that area, maybe 2 comply with that requirement to make it productive. So they go hand in hand. Like you can't, even if it's the best soil in the world, you can't make a productive unit out of 5,000 squares. It's not plausible. And so, yes, there might need to be some additional supporting information to help council come to a conclusion around this, be it from an appropriate consultant, but ultimately it's our belief that that would come back and say you could rezone this whole area settlement or some other style zone, and you would not be effectively taking any productive land out of circulation, essentially.
Can you remind me again how the settlement zone fits in with the MPS HPL?
It's an interesting one.
Yes.
It is an interesting one.
Is it rural, or is it, because it's under the rural zoning chapter of the plan, but it's not under the urban one, so I don't know if any advice can be given from Ms. Lincoln or Ms. Morgan. You will? Okay.
Yep.
And if I may add, Mr. Chairman, in terms of the NPS HPL provisions, the use of this area for rural production doesn't fit with the continuity of land parcels that are classified as highly productive.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the panel?
Oh, and if I may, prior to the hearing, Mr. Chairman, I did have a quick discussion with Rachel, and she suggested at that time that there may be some validity in introducing a rural lifestyle zone to this area in preference to a settlement zone. And we're certainly open to assessment of that, and happy to discuss that post the hearing with the reporting officer if that's appropriate. I think our concern is just that we agree on a zone, or that the panel agrees on a zone that reflects the existing character and development of the area.
Okay. I think with the anomalous kind of situation we have in front of us here, I think, yes, we will direct Ms Morgan just to sort of have a reconsideration of the zoning for that area.
Thank
It
you.
is very odd. It's neither one thing nor the other, is it? So, yes, thank you.
Yeah, it's highly fragmented, not only by the existing roading network, but as well as there's the, along its northern or northeastern boundary there, you've got the main overflow and drain. So again, like we said, it's almost isolated. It's like a little island within an area of highly productive land.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, you said only 2 of the 60 titles in the area are of a size that could be used for productive land use. What was that threshold? I didn't catch what you said.
Oh, it was just around the 4 hectare rule. So you've got the 4 hectare rule as the minimum lot size. So if we take that as rote, that council have decided that 4 hectares is a productive unit. We're not going to challenge that. I'm not the appropriate expert to do so. But if we are saying that 4 hectares is the productive unit, then like essentially all of that area cannot be used productively because they doesn't meet the minimum site thresholds.
Yeah, you said though there were 60 titles and only 2 of them. I didn't catch.
Look, I'll be a hunt. Look, that's a number that I've used that I think was correct. I can certainly clarify that. I'm happy to provide that as an answer more distinctly rather than just off the cuff, if you like. Absolutely, we can be factual. That's fine.
I'm not worried about that. I just didn't catch what you said. That the two titles that you mentioned, I didn't catch what you said about them.
Just that they are the only 2 of them that would be in excess of the 4 hectares that comply with the minimum lot size. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, apologies.
That's all.
I'll speak up.
Any questions?
Yeah, no, thank you. Your question was mine.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, and thank you
Wonderful.
for coming in person. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Chairman.
Yeah, thank you,
to
Mr
the
Chairman.
panel.
Hey, thank you, panel.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Ooh. Ooh. So, welcome, Mr. Sandell.
Yep.
And Ms. McKinnon.
Yes, it is, yeah.
Yes, thank you. We've got a copy of your PowerPoint presentation, but I'm imagining you're going to lead us through it today. This is the one entitled Plan Change 10.
Yes. No, it shouldn't be plan change 10. I submitted that as evidence originally, and then subsequently I sent through on Sunday night the presentation I want to present today.
Okay, let me just open that up. Into the wrong one.
And it should be headed up plan change 12.
Yep. Right. Okay, yep. So hopefully the IT will work.
Yep.
Oh, good. Great.
You guys can all see that?
Yes, we can. Yep.
Okay. Kia ora koutou. Just thank you for the opportunity to come and talk today. I'm Tim Sandell, and I've lived at 10 Lambton Road since 1997, so 28 years. This is my 3rd plan change that I've been through, and I'd just like to to discuss a few ideas and thoughts. So just the first thing is, I just wanted to run through these 2 slides because I guess just number 1 is showing the current mixed-use zone, being the MUZ, and in the proposed district plan it is changing to general industrial. There's a sub-area of it which is changing to general industrial, which is the GIZ, and I guess that is the change from mixed-use to general industrial, and that brings some change in I guess policy and rules associated with that. And I guess the key thing that we picked up out of that is it does allow for the storage of tyres and containers, which I'll demonstrate seems to be a step backwards. Just on the sort of point 3, sort of step 3 is in the section 42A report, it's recommended to include further parts of 85 Battery Road into the GIZ. So that, here's my pointer, that small area, I can't show, but that small area I can show on the screen behind you, but that small area is sort of crosses through the middle of the title of 85 Battery Road, and it's been recommended to bring that into GIS, which again we would oppose. And then I guess subsequently, which has been good, about 3 weeks ago we started a conversation with Rachel and the fuel companies, and we have been discussing the idea around a precinct over the site, which Rachel had drawn there in green, which you may have seen earlier this morning. So which would limit the industrial activities, and I think we felt, my wife and I anyway, we felt that it was reasonable to explore that as an opportunity, maybe to look forward into the future. So just the next slide would be around just really reinforcing precinct subzone idea has merit. It gives the fuel companies the protection they're looking for, which was protection, in our conversation. This is what Georgina, the fuel company's representative, may say different, but what I took from Friday was they're looking, they've done their hazard and risk assessment around the major hazard facility, and they're looking for protection from the increased residential development next to their major hazard facilities. They hadn't necessarily thought through what that might mean in terms of flow on, in terms of neighbouring residents, but they can talk more about that. And then it would give the existing and future residents protection, so protection from the loss of amenity value that they've suffered as a result of past and present operations at 85 Battery Road. The idea would be to limit the type of industrial activities that have permitted activity. They'll be non-compliant or discretionary, storage of tyres, storage of containers, storage of logs, transport depots, etc. May fall into those categories. It's totally open for discussion. And the activities that require heavy equipment to operate. So take some of the proposed rules, for example, noise and vehicle movements, into the plan. And the noise, I think, in some of the evidence that I provided through various emails, which hopefully you've got, we talked about, I put a table in there around noise, and there's some significant increases in noise between the MUS and the GIS, what's proposed in the GIS, but then there is this, which we hadn't picked up, but there is this clause that's been incorporated in noise, where noise generated by any activity on site in one zone, received by any activity on a site in a different zone, the activity generating the noise must comply with the noise limits and standards of the zone at the receiving site. So if that carried through, then it probably makes the actual noise table a wee bit mute, I guess. And so, but if that didn't carry through, then I guess we'd have a totally different perspective around what the noise table that had been recommended. Just cutting to the chase, 85 Battery Road has been the problem, has been the problem. I'm not sure. I did bring with me today, and I did submit it as evidence, but it didn't come up in the council link. So hopefully you guys all have had the opportunity to read through the NCC Commission Opus report, which, I think this is going back, in the middle of Plan Change 10, we had this container park turn up at 85 Battery Road, and it had a significant impact on the amenity values of the surrounding neighbours, whether you're adjacent or nearby. And I think there were some good recommendations in there in terms of how that was managed, and there's some new controls I thought had flowed through in Plan Change 10, but it's complex. I'm just an ordinary person. Reading plan changes is always complicated. But really just on that picture there was just trying to show that, what in the current, my interpretation anyway, of all the different plans I've got to look at, in the current from a noise point of view, current in the 85 is 60 dBA during the day and 55 at night, and then it's proposed to go to 70, whereas what's in the current, what's in the neighbouring areas is basically a 50-40 in the neighbouring areas. Just when you're looking at that picture there, like those containers were stacked, it was within a metre of the boundary, and it's not just noise, it was vibration, subsidence, a whole range of matters that came up as a result of that activity. I just wanted to play, I guess just here, I just really want to talk about some of the other things that have happened at Battery Road. So we've got this logs, over time, over the years that we've lived there, there's things have come and gone, and we've had this log storage sort of turn up. It comes and goes depending on what's happening, depending who's leasing the site or who the subtenants are. But what's in that picture on the left is the Ahuriri, what do they call it?
Alliance.
Ahuriri Alliance, and in the background was, I think, maybe McCarthy's or Beale with some log storage. And from my point of view, as I understand it, it becomes an HBRC matter, but logs aren't meant to be stored there, as far as my interpretation around that. And I think we've mitigated that. But then just from a noise point of view, when we come to, we get these activities, and I just really wanted to demonstrate, I've got no sound. Where's my sound man? This is just from our place. This could happen on any day of the week, any Saturday or Sunday afternoon, and they decide they want to come in and unload trucks. Here's just another example. Logs are stored around a different way, but there's a large loader in there, hanging at crashing, loading trucks, creating dust and dirt. Sorry. Just trying to go to the next slide. On the next slide, did I go too quickly on one? Next slide. This was around trucks, and there's the site currently is treated as a truck park. I don't know. There must be 30 plus trucks that are parked there. They're all log trucks, and they come and go from any time from midnight through to sort of 6 o'clock in the morning. Start, roll out of there, and sort of come back during the day. So, and then just other activities that are associated with that. I think Alicia will talk about people cleaning trucks. So, this is a nice Sunday afternoon. Sunday afternoon, and these guys are down there with their water blasting. And then. I think this was, I don't know, it's at night anyway. At some stage, you got this turkey coming in. So they're just, that's what happens with those. Oops, sorry. Just moving on, and then when Beals turned up there with all their trucks, I guess for a period of time they were doing firewood there, and it took us a while. Eventually we got that stopped, but it took time. And this is me trying to work from home one day. I won't play the other video, it's just exactly the same, but I'm just trying to show that it's a different day, same thing, different day. And there's a whole lot of logs and dirt and dust that's associated with that when it starts blowing. Got to get through. This is the Ahuriri Alliance, so it was a combination of NCC and Downers down in the front yard. They've moved out now, but this is just an example of things that can turn up. Hopefully I can just skip through. And then just a wee bit around Z Energy. So generally, in principle, we've lived in, at the time I've been there, we've lived in harmony with fuel companies. And I guess on the right-hand side, I think it's Plan Change 8, maybe came before Plan Change 10. There was a pic I took in the mid-2000s and of what it was like, and then the pic taken just a few nights ago. This is what is the change in light spill, I guess, over the course of 20-odd years. And to be fair, when you're down at night time, you've got to squint to look out your window if you're sort of looking out over West Shore. And then just dealing with these sort of things. But this got managed, not through the council, but between ourselves and Z Energy, but type of thing that happens. I know that's a hum that's coming out of some motor or pump or something. It took a month to resolve, but eventually it got resolved. I guess the real problem for us over time has been this whole container park in 2013. And I guess that's why we were so distressed about the whole fact that potentially the GIS would allow containers as free storage sort of back in that area. And it was allowed under the MUS at the time. It took 4 years to resolve. It deeply impacted the amenity value, health, well-being of many neighbours, and you can't say people got terminally sick as a direct result of that, but I'm pretty sure it's shortened up some lifespans for some of the elderly neighbours. The Mayor, CEO, so that was Barbara Arnott and Neil. I was trying to think of Neil's, the CEO of the Times name, and local councillors of the day were distressed this could happen. Even the NZL Managing Director said it wasn't a good choice of land use, and it was in the middle of Plan Change 10, and so as a result that report got written, and I thought some various changes but occurred. Whether they did or didn't, I'm not sure. But it was around putting a max height on shipping containers of 3 metres. In the pictures, it's just just trying to show. First picture is a wee bit of looking down Tongaroa Street. And there was 9 trucks in that picture. That would be a pretty common occurrence on any day. They're doubled up with 2 20-foot containers on each one, so all of them got to be loaded, unloaded, unloaded, stacked, reloaded. Yeah, so it's a bit of a shambles, the whole thing. And just looking at that photo on the left, there's forklifts working there, or a forklift, and every time it ran over from the dirt to the tar seal, it would rattle and bang. And then just really that photo I shared earlier, that's just showing the current status, well, it's showing the status of exactly what it was like at the time. And just again, this was sort of just another day at Battery Road, and I think there's all the trucks, there's 3 or 4 heavy forklifts operating, reversing beepers, containers stacked 4 or 5 high. And when it got filled up, they put them over in the rail yard. And as a result of all of that process and a lot of council time, a lot of our time, eventually and I don't know what happened between NZL and the council, but eventually they got shifted to, I think it's Mercy Street in Pandora, which is sort of always, if I even go back to my Plan Change 8 that I did in 2000, it was all about developing, that whole Pandora area as being the sort of the area where the port would have its further industrial activities, not right down in 85 Battery Road. So just finally, I think I'm going okay for time. So just, it's probably, I'm not a planner or a RMA expert, but so, our shout out to the panel and the council would be, please don't turn the MUS into GIS as proposed or recommended. There's definitely parts that have merit and others that don't. Impact on amenity values to neighbours adjacent and nearby over time have been real and are very difficult to prove. And I'm not sure if you've ever had to ring the council up and say, oh, there's someone banging something somewhere, but the first response is, oh, ring back in 30 minutes if it's still happening. But if some of these things are just things that just happen, and obviously they happen in the middle of the night or at a certain time. So, but they are regular and constant. And apart from 85 Battery Road, generally we've coexisted pretty well. And the precinct idea has merit. Just want to reinforce that point. I think it's an opportunity to enable both the fuel companies and residents and NCC to develop effective rules plan for this area for long-term harmonisation. And we have already had preliminary meeting with fuel companies, NCC, and all parties seem to be on the same page. and not much change required probably to make it work. So that's all I've got. If you've got any questions.
Thank you. Yeah, I have a few. The container issue, if containers silently could move themselves from place to place, would you have an issue with it? Is it the visual impact of the containers, or is it the truck movements and the forklifts and that really caused the issue?
Oh, it's everything. It was, go back to the amenity, it's noise, it's vibration, it's dust, it's dirt, it's visual, whatever else there is. It was a significant vibration, was a real problem for those people that were directly on the boundary. They ended up with subsidence, and yeah, it was a real problem. I think where the 3 metre rule came in out of the Opus report was associated with the to allow people like the trucking company that's here now, they've got 2 containers set up with a tent on top, which is fine, It's, doesn't move, doesn't make noise, doesn't rattle and bang and crash, So I think that was allowing for that sort of single level of sort of using containers as storage or sort of supporting infrastructure, but not actually being a container park or terminal as it was.
Because I was just thinking, I was going to ask you that a lot of industrial activities are dependent on trucks, on forklifts and all that sort of vehicle movements and things like that. If you had an industrial activity that didn't require any of those sorts of things, would that address the issue for you?
Say the idea again, sorry?
So if there was an industrial, it seems to be the vehicles that are the primary issue in terms of the noise and the dust and things like that.
Well, probably the vehicles are, but they're all interrelated. It becomes vehicles, then it becomes loaders, which are vehicles, I guess. If the vehicles, and then it's traffic.
Yeah.
And then it's just you talk about dirt and dust, and Alicia will demonstrate dust. But then dust becomes an HBRC matter, not a district plan matter, and it gets complicated.
Yeah.
And when we're trying to navigate our way through talking to people about that, and I think it's just critical to have rules that support both the fuel companies and the residents. I think I was reflecting. The residents were there before the fuel companies. But the fuel companies they were there before me, so very respectful of that. And it's just finding, I think if there's some control put around the whole use of 85 Battery Road, that would make a significant difference, I think, to the amenity value for the residents, but the overall sort of harmonisation across what was the mixed-use zone.
So how long have you been at your property for?
28 years.
And what was happening on that site when you moved in?
And originally it was empty, apart from one side I think was like a storage for people keep their caravans and boats and stuff there. Yeah. Right. And before that, I think originally it though was the terminal for probably Shell back in the day before Z. It was probably there, but they've shifted. Their terminal is now over in the main part of I can see it on my screen.
Tank farm. No.
What's the other street called? It's
Bull Street?
Bull, maybe. Yeah, the other street that comes off Coronation Street, that's where their main terminal is now. So for where they, and to Zed's credit, they've done a great job of, putting a pretty quiet terminal in there now, where the trucks refuel and they come in and out. They run good trucks, a modern fleet of trucks. You very rarely hear them coming and going. So it's mainly just the activities at 85 Battery Road. It seems when it gets vacant that, it's a bit of who's going to turn up. And then we have to go through a process of, trying to moderate them back to fitting within the rules. And that's just seems to, the cycle we've been through.
And you talked about vibration and subsidence. Can you just elaborate a little bit more on those two? Yeah,
so definitely the people that lived in the houses, you'll see that right next door to 85 Battery Road, there's some apartments. It could be owned by the Napier City Council, not sure, but there's some flats there that are there, and so the people that live right next door there, they were as containers were put on the ground, boom, they got vibration through ground vibration, and they even got noise vibration, so I guess just sort of like it from an explosive point of view. So that was a concern, and what they said is that they were getting subsidence, and there'd be plenty of, someone dug back through the NCC records or something, and even in the Opus report, I think there's relatively a large amount of evidence that sort of just talks about that. Yeah.
And you're fairly comfortable with the sort of precinct controls that have been suggested for it?
I think they've got merit. I think by making containers, tyre storage, and making those discretionary, non-compliant activities, I think that has merit, and I'd probably want to extend that out to probably log storage or something like that, just to make sure that those activities needed to. Just to ensure there was some conversation that went on before they just turned up, and because like with NZL, they committed to a 4-year lease and then they turned up, and it took 4 years to resolve. So yeah, it wasn't pleasant for anyone,
Right. I think one of the issues that planners experience too is when you've got a situation like this where you've had some very specific kinds of uses or activities, is to ring fence those. But then this, 10 years' time, there's something that comes along that we hadn't anticipated that has the same sort of level of effects and things. And that's kind of one of the issues or questions in my mind is, okay, you can ring fence certain activities based on history, but is that really going to manage the long-term activity and the effects of the use of the land if something else comes along that requires a lot of truck movements and forklifts and the like?
I think what I'm looking for today, Rob, would be just recognition of the history, because we felt that a bit of institutional knowledge had been lost. When we first started this conversation, to be fair, there was the people weren't even aware of the history of the site. So part of today was to share the history, a bit of institutional value, and then talk about how we can go forward. So I see under the precinct idea there's an opportunity to, whether we ring fence certain bits or whether we come up with some rules that allow that that would just allow a conversation to occur before something happened. So everyone's going in with a good understanding of what the requirements are.
Right. Thank you. Questions from the panel?
No, that's pretty clear.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel I have a good understanding. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Ms. McKinnon.
Thank you. So this morning I circulated an oral statement and also some images. I've got some copies here in case you don't have any.
I'm good. You're good.
Yeah, so kia ora koutou. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak today, and I'm going to tell my side of the story. Tim lives directly above me on the hill, and I'm down on the flat on Battery Road. So I do have similar points that Tim have made, but I'll try and gloss over them so we don't repeat as much as possible. So as Tim has done, I'm going to focus on 85 Battery Road and the rezoning from mixed use to general industrial area. So I'm the property owner of 106 Battery Road, and I have lived there since 2007, so nearly 18 years. And I've experienced a significant intensification of industrial activities on the property since I've lived there. And as Tim noted as well, many of the residential properties were present well before the Shell depot established in the 1980s. So my house was built in 1947. So you can see in my attachment on the A3, A there, you've got the 85 Battery Roads site, and then that red star on the bottom right-hand side is my property. So I'm bang in the middle of all of it. Also take that my original submission and my further submission has been read, and within that I strongly opposed MUS going to GIZ for 85 Battery Road. As Tim alluded to, the problem is not with the fuel storage facilities, which in my opinion has not really had a real significant impact on residential amenity. The problem is with the type of activities that can occur at the front of the site, so well in front of the tanks.
So when I first moved to Battery Road back in 2007, you can see in panel B there of the A3, on the left-hand side was a craft boat caravan park. So really relatively benign activity that really didn't have any impact. And then on the right-hand side, you can see it was vacant. But that quickly changed, as Tim alluded to. We had NZ containers come, and that really significantly intensified the activities on the sites. And you can see in my panel C just how close those containers are to that kind of horseshoe flats that Tim was talking to, where the vibration and the subsidence was happening. I recall at the time there was actually geotech reports done, and my understanding there's lots of car bodies and stuff that was used to fill this pond area, so the land is quite unstable. Yeah, and so activities with the containers would start at 7 in the morning, sometimes finish at 10 p.m. at night. You can't move a container quietly. Bang, bang, metal, no matter how much they tried to be quiet. And also the vibrations. I had wooden windows at the time, and be in the shower and your windows would rattle, and you can hear it and you could feel it. So quite significant impact there. So, but yeah, with a lot of effort, we got the container park to move on. It was a lot of effort from residents like Tim and ourselves and council. But then it really intensified after the container park left, as you can see from panel D on the top right of the A3. So you can see the site's sort of divided into three. On the left-hand side, you've got McCarthy's logging trucks. At the bottom, up the top right, you've got Beals. And then at the time, we had Downer Napier City Council Alliance in the front section there. So we estimate that there's probably about 30 or more trucks that are on the site at this present point of time. And I understand you're going for a site visit today, and not all of them will be in. Where you see cars is where a truck would park. So the most opportune time to see actually how intense the trucks are is on a Sunday afternoon, and they're shoulder to shoulder all around that Beals site, and not so much on the McCarthy's, but yeah, it's quite intense. And I also like to note, with Downer, etc., coming onto the site, you can sort of see just up from the red star where my property is, that grey driveway. That was the first time the gate has ever been opened. So even Shell Energy, when they established in the 1980s, the residents were really concerned about health and safety of the residents and pedestrians and things. Even NZL did not open that gate. And so Downer and etc. were the first one to come out there, and there was significant vehicle movements when they were there. They had the small class 2 trucks, but also you had the big, huge double trucks trying to get in to the site. You can sort of see from the image on the bottom right, the truck and vehicle activity in and out of 85 Battery Road. So you've got a big truck trying to reverse in, got other trucks sort of parked around. You even have Downer utes parked on the grass outside the site, so it can get quite intense there. But fortunately, they have moved on. They're now in Onikawa industrial area, which is a better site for them to be in my opinion. Also, you can see from those other images on the A3, some of this you'll see today. So they've got those red logging trucks, which are McCarthy's, and that's parked right up against the residential boundary of Battery Road. And so their exhausts are facing the houses. And as Tim alluded to, Beals at the back right of the site, you can see that middle image with them taking logs off trucks. So bang, bang, clang, clang, backwards and forwards, loading logs, and sometimes they're stored there for weeks or more, otherwise short periods of time. And that's the view, bottom left images from my property, and you can see the trucks facing my house there. Just gives you an idea of what it's all like. Yeah, so, and E there is a picture through my front window, looking out on a sunny afternoon, and you can just see the dust that accumulates on my window. I'm getting very good at cleaning windows. The reason why that occurs is because half the site on the Beals side is not asphalt, it's not covered. So when all these logging trucks come in, dust comes up. And even it happened today, and that's sort of a relatively moist, wet environment at this point of time, not like the middle of summer. You can see the dust sort of going down Battery Road at certain points of time. One thing I want to touch on as well is the truck stop definition in the current operative plan. So under the operative plan, service stations and transport depots are a discretionary activity at 85 Battery Road. And the definition of a transport depot includes a carrier's depot and a truck stop. One would think that logging trucks parking up overnight would be considered a truck stop, but that's not the case. My understanding that the logging truck companies were issued a compliance letter by the council in 2023 to lodge a resource consent, but this was challenged by their lawyers. The outcome that a resource consent was not needed for their truck stop activities and that they are permitted activity despite the detrimental effects that it has on nearby residents. Recently, I requested a copy of the legal advice council received on the trucking activities at 85 Battery Road. This was declined just last night under the Local Government Information Act, but I do suggest that the hearing panel requests a copy of that advice from the council to more fully understand what is going on. This example of the truck stop definition is kind of a battle of definitions between lawyers and planners, is my opinion. And it just really highlights the challenges of how to manage 85 Battery Road. And this needs to be addressed through the proposed plan. For me, noise has been a big issue. I've lost many nights of sleep, particularly during weekdays, and I've got a substantive government job, and that really has impacted on my wellbeing. I go to bed at 8 o'clock at night. So personally, I've had to invest over 20K to be able to live there because I enjoy living in Ahuriri. So I've put double glazing in, I put a higher boundary fence between my neighbours and I. I've also recently put a big, huge 2-metre high noise insulation fence across the top of my property. And so what have the companies done? Not a lot. They've moved the trucks slightly off the boundary. They've moved some of them around so the exhausts face the sea. And they've stopped the chainsawing of the logs on a Sunday afternoon for 3 or 4 hours, which drove anyone crazy. And so for me, I think to Section 16 of the RMA, operators are meant to, avoid unreasonable noise, but, feels a bit inequitable. So moving on to the Section 42A report recommendations, which I'm sure you heard from Rachel this morning. So there's a couple key ones there for the Ahuriri industrial area, which is extending the GIS to the whole area, that purple rectangle that Tim showed you, which is very, very close to my boundary. And also the precinct idea about permitting fuel storage facilities and light industrial activities, which has been suggested and we've been discussing with council staff and the fuel company representatives. So I know that you're, based on the Section 42 report, they were keen to have evidence from myself and Tim and others, and this will be reconsidered following the hearing. So my initial reaction to the entire 85 road site being turned into GIS was really concerning, because on face value, the noise limits, as Tim alluded to, for instance, like the sort of the late evening, early morning noise limit from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. was proposed from current levels, which is 45 decibels, to go up to 70 decibels. So that's a change of 25 decibels during the early hours of the morning, which is quite significant, and it would allow in the future really noisy activities to operate through the night. But as Tim also mentioned as well, that my concerns with the GIS noise limits are somewhat mitigated because of that extra clause that Tim read out, which relates to noise S1, the standard S1. And so it means that the noise level at the GIS residential zone boundary would need to comply with the residential zone limits, not higher than the GIS, which is nice. That's a great thing to have in there. But noise limits on their own are not going to solve our problem. And that's where, we were just talking about earlier about, if we didn't have the heavy trucks and the forklift movements, would that resolve our issue? But then there's all these unintended consequences of other activities coming in through time. Storage of tyres being a permitted activity just seems crazy to me when you're so near a fuel tank. Shipping containers being permitted. It's just, as Tim said as well, that when I was talking to one of the council staff the other week, he had no idea that the NZL containers were on that site. He always thought they were down in Pandora, so that's quite concerning. But also I understand, given the height rule in the proposed plan, containers could, in theory, be stacked 24 metres high, which is ludicrous. I think that ends up being 10 containers. I don't even know if it's physically possible for them to get them that high, but that's one of those unintended consequences of the proposed rules. And also the precinct proposal, it does have merit if it's done right and it's well thought through. And we did have that initial meeting with the fuel company representatives and the council staff last Friday, the 13th. So discussions are very in the early days. We're still waiting for the fuel companies to respond to some of the points that we raised the other week. And so that was looking at permitting light industrial activities and fuel storage facilities and allowing other activities to be discretionary. Yeah, just to sum up, so precinct, got merits, but as I said, it has to be done carefully because from my point of view, I want the noise limits during the early hours of the morning to be mitigated in some way, and it's been very, very hard for council staff to be able to actually measure the noise in those early mornings because of the background noise with the rail yard and other things and birds and things, so it's really hard for them to actually pin it down to show that they're actually above the noise limits. And if sort of that precinct idea doesn't go forward, then I would oppose that Ahuriri site becoming GIZ under the proposed plan. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak.
Okay, thank you. You may be aware that Ms McPherson, on behalf of the fuel companies, will be here tomorrow just before lunchtime. May wish to attend virtually or in person. At that time, we will be asking her, in terms of this precinct concept, whether she has the authority to talk on behalf of all of the landowners within that suggested precinct, because they're not necessarily all owned by the fuel company, or fuel companies, I should say. But thank you very much for that. I'll turn to the panel for any questions.
Yeah, no, very clear, thank you.
You know,
Just question from me, and I should have asked Mr Sandel as well. There's a number of existing large commercial buildings on Coronation Street and Tangaroa Street. Have those activities caused any issues from your perspective?
On Tongariro Street, probably a handful of times over time. I think they were for the residents that live next door to them.
Yeah.
At the time it was, I think Pacific Trawling might have been in there and they've got a workshop or something, and I remember talking to the, as part of that whole NZL debacle, talking with the people, the residents at the time that lived there, that it had been a problem for them from time to time. And I think some of the noise is it's intermittent noise, but it's significant when it happens, and it's very difficult to, as Alicia said, for it to be measured. Just on the comment around the land ownership, appreciate that, and the fact that maybe there needs to be some further consultation with other landowners that sit within that area. But then does that then there's also all our residents out of, I think I just had a count up in the Opus report, there were 21 submitters in that. And in this, to stay in this plan change process, you've got to be an ultra marathon runner. And this started in 2023, and we're here now. Like, there's two of us, we're survivors, and I think there's if people just aren't aware of a lot of the stuff that that's been proposed or what's going to be changed. So I just think don't forget about might be talk to the other industries that are part of that, but just remember there's also the residents that are next door to them as well.
There's one thing I wanted to sort of highlight, which I forgot to do, is that not all the trucks go at the same time. So, one could go at 2 o'clock, and the next one could go at 2:30, and then another 3 could go at 3, and all the trucks are different. There's Scania ones that are modern, they're not so noisy, but you get the old Kenworth, and they can idle forever, and they're really noisy. So it's kind of becomes a continuous noise through those early hours of the morning. It's not like it's in a 1 hour block. So I just wanted to highlight that. You can't experience that unless you live there.
And possibly one thing Georgina might bring up, she sort of mentioned it the other day, is just the whole, it's important to, as a Hawke's Bay region, it's important to support the economic viability of the region. And that sometimes comes up. Well, they need to, we need industrial space. It needs to be close to the port. And we went through that whole debate back in 2012, 2013, which was even back in the mid 2000s, which was all about the development of the Pandora industrial sort of spaces that were sort of identified across the city. I think there's whatever half a dozen of them. So And, you know, my day job is I live and breathe all that port supply chain stuff, and, you know, certainly it's not reliant, the survival of Hawke's Bay is not reliant on the activities at 85 Battery Road being heavy industrial, so, yeah.
Okay, and just one minor question for you, Ms McGibbon. The E photograph, you've got the dust on your window. It may be a trick of the light, but like, it's kind of funny-looking dust, if that's right. It's sort of streaks rather than...
Yeah, it's
dots,
probably a little bit
film.
of factor of some of the rain sometimes coming on to the window and sort of dripping down a bit. But it is there's logging dust from the logs that come into the site, and also the dust that comes from the ground as well. So I don't know how safe that some of that dust is, given the logs. I did have a dust collector put on the front of my lawn by HBRC, but that was at the time of the NZL containers, and it didn't pick up anything. But I wonder now if I should try and get another collector.
Thank you for that. Any further questions from the panel?
No.
No, all good. Well, thank you very much for your presentation, your joint presentation. Been very helpful. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Okay. Okay, well, welcome to the hearing.
Thank you.
So who am I talking to
Yeah,
specifically?
good afternoon, panel, and thanks for having us today. I'm Paul O'Shaughnessy from Strategy Planning,
Oh, yeah.
and this is Bob Howe from Goldwater AU Limited.
Okay, thank you.
I just advise Bob's hearing's a little bit average, so if you can just
We'll try and talk up.
speak up. Yep, that'd be great. So thanks again for having us today, and I'd also like to thank Council and Rachel Morgan for the Section 42A report and its positive recommendation in relation to our submission. Just very briefly and just recapping our submission, we seek the rezoning of Bob's land or Goldwater's land at 13, 15, 15A Wellesley and 1 Kennedy Road from high-density residential to mixed use, and also to rezone balance sites not owned by Bob, located on Wellesley Road and Owen Street, also from high-density to mixed use. It is considered that the mixed-use zone would allow Goldwater to develop their 4 land holdings more easily for residential and commercial purposes, to maximise their locational advantages close to the CBD, nearby commercial uses, and to serve a growing surrounding residential area, which will likely increase should the wider high-density provisions become operative. In terms of Bob's desire to develop his land, he has actually amalgamated the 4 land holdings into 1 record of title, with the idea of making it easier for comprehensive mixed-use development should the PDP so allow. This amalgamation process occurred in 2024 with a concurrent land use consent to address some minor land use infringements resulting from the amalgamation. It is also considered the high-density zoning does not recognise the extent of non-residential uses currently occurring within the area, and will result in these uses having to rely on existing use rights and or the need for resource consent approval to extend or change. As I've said, I've read the 42A report prepared by Rachel, concur, support and greatly appreciate its recommendations in relation to the submission by Goldwater. Associated with this outcome, probably a bit of a mistake from me not including it in the original submission. We do seek the additional consequential relief, that is the inclusion of the properties in the city fringe control area. inclusion of the properties in the city fringe control area will provide additional opportunities for large format retail and hospo activities to occur, an outcome that we consider is entirely consistent with that of the surrounding mixed-use zone, which is within the control area. Finally, the recommendations in the 42A report are supportive and consequential changes to include the sites in the city fringe control area. That's about it from me. I think Bob wants to have a few words, and then whether we wait for questions, or unless you want to ask me any questions now.
No, Mr. Howe, you want to add any comment to that?
Bob?
Yeah.
Bob, would you like to?
Just very briefly, yeah. My rationale behind all this is right across the road from me is the new Winds building, for want of a better name. There's somewhere between 200 and 300 people supposedly work there, and there's not a cafe within miles. I watch them every day, wandering up to the Shell service station and wandering back with a pie and a cup of coffee, because that's obviously all they can buy there. There's all the Harvey Norman area across the road. There's nothing there. There's nothing anywhere around for anybody to. There's no cafes. There's no shops. There's no nothing in that area. My rationale is if this whole area becomes high density down toward George's Drive, well, I lived overseas for about 5 years exporting, and so I spent about 9 months a year overseas. And I used to live in apartments, and people that live in apartments overseas don't go to the supermarket. They tend to go downstairs and go to a shop that's just 1 or 2 doors away from where they live, and they buy from the delicatessen or they buy from the bakery, etc., etc. There appears to be no provision for that in your town plan at all. But I would have thought it was quite important that if you're going to have high density shopping, high density housing, that the people who live in those places are going to act a little bit differently to the normal person who goes to the supermarket. Most of them will just go downstairs, go and buy a bottle of wine within a couple of doorsteps. But I'm just making that point. I don't own those properties. It's just what I've observed when I lived overseas for many years trying to export meat and timber and things like that. And, even in Shanghai, where I lived a lot, that's the same thing applies there. The people who live in the apartments, they just go downstairs, and that's my rationale behind this development. I don't know if the committee see any merit in that sort of thoughts or not, but anyhow, that's my submissions. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
I'll answer any questions.
Okay, so just to understand it fully, you're in concurrence with the recommendations of the reporting officer for this land?
That's correct.
Yeah.
We are. Yep.
Okay, no changes or any additions, just supporting the recommendations to rezone to MUZ?
That's right. And just to include the sites also within the control area,
Yep.
which we omitted to request.
All right. No, it's easy to miss, I tell you. Okay, any questions from the panel?
Thank you very much, Paul and Bob. Not a question through you, Mr. Chair, but more a comment. I appreciate we don't have a point of disagreement. I was just going to say it will be a shame to lose your beautiful garden at some stage. And the sculpture garden you have
And it's
there.
saying it'd be a shame to lose your garden and your sculptures.
Well, unfortunately, my wife is not well these days. She has cancer, and so that's why the garden's gone back. But in its day, it was a very, very nice garden, and everybody noted it.
Yes, beautiful garden.
What happened to the kiwi?
The kiwi is back on the site.
No.
I see the kiwi.
The kiwi needed a bit of repairing. It's a bit like me.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Any questions?
No, that's good, thank you.
Right, well, thank you very much for your attendance. That was very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Nicola, who do we...
Paul O'Shaughnessy's up next, he's just saying that.
Yeah, okay, just to be sure. We'll just wait for Mr O'Shaughnessy to return.
He's doing the next two.
Mm. Welcome back.
Yep, thanks.
You want to swap hats now? Right, we've seen your pre-circulated evidence, so thank you very much for that.
Yep.
The floor is yours to talk to it, if you may.
Thank you. Again, this is a relatively easy sort of summary given the 42A report. It's very supportive of what we're trying to achieve. Rob Townsend from Bayswater Vehicles unfortunately couldn't make it and sends his apologies.
Okay.
But he's totally aware of what's going on. Again, I'd like to thank Council and Rachel Morgan for the 42A report, which is very positive in terms of our submission. Again, just a very quick summary. Our submission seeks a rezoning of the subject sites. I won't list them all, from general residential to mixed use. The sites in question, owned by Bayswater Vehicles, are currently used for the sale and service of motor vehicles, whilst the remaining sites contain a pretty even mix of existing commercial and residential activities, including a childcare facility, vet, clinic, medical practice. The submission requested that the PDP zoning for the sites identified be changed to mixed use to reflect the large degree of existing commercial use occurring on these sites and to be consistent with the mixed use zoning of the sites on the opposite side of Carlisle, being the block generally bounded by Faraday Street, Carlisle Street and Thackeray Street. Again, I've read the 42A report prepared by Rachel, concur, support and again appreciate greatly its recommendations to amend the zoning of the sites to mixed use. Again, associated with this outcome, we also seek a couple of consequential additions. One is the removal of the sites in question from the Napier Hill Mataruahau Amenity Precinct. And this matter has been covered in the 42A report by Rachel, and I believe she supports that consequential change. And as with Goldwater, we would also like the sites to be included within the city fringe control area. An issue, again, my mistake, I did not include that in the original submission. As was the case with Wellesley Road, the inclusion of the sites in the city fringe control area will provide additional opportunities for large format retail and hospo to occur, and it's entirely consistent with that of the surrounding mixed-use zone proposed, which is within the control area. the recommendation in the 42A report is supported, and the additional consequential changes sought in terms of the control area and exclusion from the Mata Ruahau amenity precinct. Again, not too much else to say, given we've had good support from council in the 42A report. So thanks for having me, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions?
No,
No,
straightforward.
Shaughnessy? No, I have no questions, so thank you very much for that.
Yep, thank you.
Been appreciated.
I think we're up again.
Hi.
Welcome.
Right. Third time.
Yeah,
Mr. Sanson,
yes, that's me, Gordon Sanson from
welcome.
Home.
Next to you is the man of many hats, so
Yeah.
welcome back.
Yeah.
Long time no see. So thank you. We've also got your pre-circulated evidence in respect of this particular rezoning request, so thank you for that. So,
So again,
the floor is
I
yours.
think I might just do a quick summary, and I believe, Gordon, you answer questions or have a
Yep.
few words yourself?
If I need to, yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So again, thanks council, thanks Rachel for the recommendation and ongoing suggestions on how we can make our submission work in terms of trying to achieve what Gordon's wants. In summary, our submission requested that the PDP zoning for the subject sites, which included 337 Miani Road, which is zone settlement, and the sites at 336, 338 and 340 Miani Road, which are currently rural production, we sought to have them rezoned to the neighbourhood centre zone. I've read the 42A report prepared by Rachel, concur, support and appreciate its recommendations in relation to the submission, which specify that further consideration of evidence presented, further consideration need to be presented at the hearing around creating possibly a more bespoke precinct over 336, 338 and 340 Miani Road to provide some rural scale commercial and community activities. In response to the recommendations in the 42A report, we then amended our relief sought to rezone only 336, 338 and 340 to settlement zone and to create an overlay which we named the Miani precinct, applying to those three sites only. It was proposed that the settlement zone provisions would remain, in addition to the Miani precinct permitting small-scale commercial activities. It was considered that a settlement zoning would be consistent with a settlement zone located on the southern side of Miani Road and would reflect that the sites are non-productive rural land with existing use rights in that regard. The National Planning Standards Framework describes the settlement zone as areas used predominantly for a cluster of residential, commercial, light industrial and or community activities that are located in rural or coastal environments. It is considered that the approach sought in this relief is consistent with the intention of the settlement zone. Further advice received just this week from Council suggests retaining the existing rural production zoning and introducing a Miani Road specific control area instead of a precinct, which would again permit commercial activities with gross floor area up to 300. This approach would include retaining the rural production zone bulk and location controls. Again, we appreciate the assistance from Council and from Rachel and we partially support the approach in terms of the provision to permit small-scale commercial activities. But we consider this opportunity could be compromised by the performance standards that apply to the rural production zone, specifically around site coverage and yard controls. We consider the control area would have greater commercial viability if more specific performance standards were relaxed to reflect the existing pattern of development. We would respectfully request that council consider discrete inclusions in the control area to allow, for example, a 30% site coverage control rather than 10%, which would be applicable under the rural production zoning, and to possibly consider front yards of 3 to 5 metres and 3 metre internal yards. I realise this was pretty off the cuff sort of plan drafting that we're doing, and we would welcome further interaction with council to polish these rules up to benefit council and Gordon.
Okay.
So that's really it from me.
Okay, well, I just to advise you that subsequent to Ms Morgan's opening summary statement this morning, we have asked her whether she would consider sort of the pros and cons of a flipped thing, more in line with the original submission in terms of a settlement zoning for these sites, but with a precinct over control to not open the door to a wide range of activities that may be inappropriate for this location. So that will be part of her reply in the future. Yep. So just maybe if you are consulting over provisions, maybe that's one of the aspects you could bear in mind.
Yep.
That'd be good.
So looking at retaining a settlement, or
putting rezoning it to settlement for these sites, but with a precinct control to sort of manage what goes on specifically for these sites.
That sounds like a good solution.
In addition to potential commercial uses, Gordon is trying to also develop a residential dwelling in his site, which is a little bit difficult under the current rules, where you have to have a minimum site area of 2,500 square metres.
Right.
Gordon's got about 1,700. The settlement zoning, I think minimum site is 1,000 square metres.
So this would be at the back of the hotel buildings?
Back of the Miani shop.
No, the shop. Okay.
Gordon's
So the
site
property's a dog leg, so you can see that bit of a green area at the back.
Yep.
And we'd convert, there's a sort of a building there, we'd convert to a residence. But I think the key driver is the people in Miani, they're actually a very tight community, and they're very loyal to themselves. And they, especially after the cyclone, they feel like a little bit of a lack of community. And if there was a bit more development there, that would help them. You know, if you look historically, they fundraised to build that badminton hall, and so they sort of want that sort of community sort of structure back. And it actually covers quite a large area. Surprisingly, it covers like people from Jervois Town, come there, Awatoto, Brookfields, and especially since that Awatoto road's been upgraded, it's got certainly a lot better, a lot busier. So that's the thoughts there. If we can do some nicer development there, it would just help that community.
And I think also the loss of the bridge. Is it the Brookfield Bridge or Chestow Bridge?
Yeah, that stopped people going through to Parkway, obviously, unless they go by boat. Yeah.
The only question I had, Mr. O'Shaughnessy, was your zoning map on your page, your figure 2. As you know, planners usually cadastralise zoning boundaries. It's on top of page 4.
Yep.
Yeah. Your suggestion there is to basically split that property on the corner here in front of us there and have the zoning boundary cut across there.
Yeah, again, a rough first go at it. But I thought the idea was to sort of, just include the existing built environment there, possibly retain the potential HPL land out the back. We're totally aware that the site is unserviced in terms of water, waste, all three waters.
That hotel area is pretty much all effluent field, so it's not productive anyway. So, but that's what the thought was, just to include the buildings in one of those drafts.
Understood.
But if it makes sense to keep it within the boundary.
Okay. I think we'll ask Ms Morgan just to take that on board, the question around where if it were to be rezoned, where that boundary should be shown. Okay. Any questions from the panel?
Yeah, just from me, look, I'm not persuaded that your original submission lacks merit in terms of a neighbourhood centre zone, and in terms of the activities you've been describing, small-scale commercial activities, etc., they seem to be catered for by the neighbourhood centre zone. So I guess what I'll be looking for the officers to come back and reply is a proper options analysis of all the scenarios you've been putting forward, neighbourhood centre zone, settlement zone by itself, or settlement zone with the precinct, and in my view, simple is best. And if the neighbourhood centre zone can cater to the aspirations of the submitters and it fits in with the existing environment, then I'd need to be persuaded why that's not appropriate.
Obviously, that was Gordon's first option.
That was a original
commercial
submission. Yeah.
Yeah, hence my questions to the officers to address that in their reply report to us.
Yep, I appreciate that.
Okay, thank you. No further questions?
No.
No. Well, thank you very much for your
Well,
attendance.
thanks for your time.
Thank you, Mr Sanson.
We'll see you around.
Okay.
You done for the day too? Oh, just about.
Right. We're just having trouble getting hold of Mr Singh, who is our last submitter for the day. I'm not sure if there's been any progress on that front. 3:30. Okay. Well, we'll adjourn the hearing until 3:30 then. Thank you.
Yeah.
Number 6 on rezoning requests had adjourned briefly and we've reconvened to hear our final submitters for the day. Mr. Singh, welcome.
Yes,
and your
thank you.
father.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much. Thank you for having us.
And the ubiquitous Mr. O'Shaughnessy.
Yes.
Has been providing advice. So we've seen your pre-circulated evidence on this particular rezoning request. Thank you. So,
What was this, sorry?
Evidence prepared
Oh, yes.
yep. And yeah, we've seen that and the pictures that you've provided as well.
Thank you.
That's been helpful. So thank you. So over to you.
Perfect. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. So my name's Jaz Singh. I'm son of Jagjeevan Jay Singh. So we currently own the property on 1 Cray Street and 1A Cray Street, Te Awa Avenue. We've been there for over 16 years now, since we moved here from Auckland. I'm running a dairy shop and takeaway for the last 16 years. So, basically writing this response and, requesting your guys' thoughts and, to reconsider the proposal of rezoning 1 Cray Street to the neighbourhood centre zone. That is mainly due to first being, we've been operating out of there for the last 16 years, and also with the current development that we are looking to do on the property, which we have resource consent for as per the submission, it makes sense to be able to have that facility and having that zoning in that area to be able to service the larger Miriwa and Te Awa area, as well as Maraenui. As you guys will be aware, the growth in that area has grown before the subdivision that has happened in Te Awa. When you go towards Hastings, Miriwa, the closest store would probably, similar construction to that would possibly be in the Maraenui area or Miriwa shops, even though we still offer something considerably different with having those 3 commercial tenancies there, as well as those apartments on top. Secondly, as I said, we've been there for 16 plus years. We're heavily involved with the community as well. So with providing this, we're able to better service our community as well. It's not just about the money, it's more about having those services available for people around the area that are in desperate need, because we do have customers coming to us day on, day out that we don't have those daily needs that they need, or, because they don't want to go into town and go into Pack and Save and have all those options, like having a chemist, something along those lines, having a bigger store there so we can actually fulfill our customers' needs, whereas actually currently we are limited, and with this proposal that we have will help us grow further. And it's just sort of us for also going through and being consistent. As you can see with the photo evidence that we've provided in Latham Street and Vigor Brown, they've all been included in the neighbourhood zone, and they do have the same sort of operations as we do, if a little bit larger. But if we look at it as per capita size, we're technically the same. So it's having the consistency in the areas with us matching the neighbourhood centre zone as well. So the only hub for... Yeah, so, and basically become a hub for the community there, because there's nothing like that similar to around the corner. Even though we have the resource consent, we believe having this zoning put in is the icing on the cake and helps us move forward with anything else that will require any changes in the future, and it will help a little bit of freedom for us as well. So, because obviously we've just got resource consent, we've got to go to building consent still. And as you know, there's always some changes required. And also, we've also tested ourselves of how we're in that 50-year flood zone and 100-year flood zone area. And for some weird reason, which is good, we're out of that for the 100 years as well. So, it'll be a safe, secure development for the area as well as being consistent with other stores that are in the area of wider Napier, as well as, our community focus. We are involved with the community quite a bit. We sponsor the Napier Boys, the Te Awa School, rugby clubs around the area. We won the award.
We've also, in 2021 and 2020, when COVID happened, we really helped out in the community, giving out the free food bags. We've won awards as well for the best area in Hawke's Bay, best area in New Zealand, Small Business Prosper Business Award. So, we're just not any other person requesting for
this sort of zoning as a permission. And, you know, we've actually got the backing and the experience to do it. And the zoning will help us make it easier going forward. Hopefully that covered quite a bit. Do you guys have any questions?
Well, Mr. Shaughnessy, do you have, I mean, you've got your evidence here, do you have something to add at this moment? Because then I think we'll just open it up to questions for everyone.
No, I think there's Jazz here, he prepared that evidence himself. I prepared the submission, but no, I'll just take my evidence, my submission as read and
Okay.
nothing further to add. I'll probably just stress what Jazz was talking about, consistency. Some of the other existing commercial areas that are within the centre zone.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you to.
Very similar scale.
Yeah. You've given some examples, and one was a two-shopped kind of site, and then the other two were both on opposite corners on Vigil Brown Avenue. I think that with Vigil Brown, there's quite a number of little commercial properties around that sort of intersection there.
It's got three corners, I think.
But I believe, so for that sort of sense as well, there's, it's just better located, right? There's a bigger street that goes into the wider part of Napier, where we are only limited to Te Awa Ave. So if you go further down there, there hasn't been any commercial, even, you know, use of land down there probably ever, other than where our current store is, whereas that butchery is no longer there. There's a barber shop in there now. So in that instance, those are, you know, already there. So that makes sense. The community, but that has access we're trying to provide to the area sort of behind that, where there's currently nothing accessible to along those lines.
So if you've got your resource consent to build this sort of little use development, why rezone it if you've got your consent?
So obviously the consent, we've got the consent, and when we were applying for the consent, we had a chat to Paul, and he did advise us of these changes. And as per those changes, it was advised to us that it would be a good idea to apply for the neighbourhood centre zone. So say that if there do need to be changes to the resource consent, it would make life a little bit easier for us as well, as to be able to adhere to the council's regulations, as we have with when we've applied for resource consent. We've met the signage area that was required at that time, as well as the commercial exposure that we can have on site, the type of building and how it should look to fit into the area, and not only that, but also the type of tenancies that we can have. So it's already listed that we won't be having anything along liquor stores or, you know, licensed premises in there. And because we've got such good relationships with the schools, we wouldn't go down that way. But with the zoning, it just provides something to the community. Say if we do go and sell it and move on, which we won't, there is opportunity for people there.
Okay.
I guess you call it a bit of a belt and brace approach.
So the introduction to the neighbourhood centre zone talks about applying to small blocks of shops within communities that typically include activities such as dairy, cafe, etc. So your contention, Mr. O'Shaughnessy, if I understand it, is that this would represent or consist of a similar kind of...
Oh, 100%. We won't be moving our shops. So the way that we've done it is have this zone, this development approved, that we will be doing it in two parts. So the initial part, the dairy won't stop running. And then once that first initial part is done, we can move the dairy into there and build the second part. And so there's multiple ways that we can look at how we're going to do it, but most likely we're looking at having a chemist, cafe, and a shop in that area, which will service the needs of the area, such as, and you know, yeah, those other things that we can also add on, but those key things are going to be able to meet the customer's requirements, because if we look at the age demographics around that area, it varies, because we've got the Somerset, Rest Home Village, we've got the New Te Awa development, we've got first home buyers because they can buy cheaper houses on some of those streets around that area. When you go to Chambers, when you go to Cray Street, when you go down Nuffield, and even on Te Awa Ave. So, you know, having something along those lines in that area is going to benefit it no matter what.
Right. Okay, thank you. Questions from the panel?
No, thank you. I think I had a general line of questioning as well around what was the benefit for yourselves in doing that, but I think you've done a good job of explaining your reasoning, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No, Mr. Singh and Mr. O'Shaughnessy, no questions or clarification for me, but just to, by way of comment, I can see the merit in your submission, so thank you for that.
No further questions from me. So thank you very much for attending today. Much appreciated.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you guys' time.
God bless you guys. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
Okay. That's our last submitted for the day. So we'll adjourn hearing stream 6 for the day and resume tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. So thank you.